Hey peoples, welcome back for part 2 of my brass annealer. I'm going to take just a little bit of a deeper dive into how this thing works and what all is involved with it. So as you can see, we got ourselves a turntable. What makes the turntable work is we have a timer here. The description will be in the comment section with links for all the major components. This timer chip here, you can program it. Currently I have it set to 1/10 of a second closed, 10 seconds open. Underneath there's a solenoid, and that's what controls the position. It's wired up into the normally open part of the circuit. So basically it pulls the solenoid down for 1/10 of a second, and then I found that that's plenty to get it to start moving. It disengages it and starts moving. So that's that. As far as the propane torch goes, I really like this bendy one. It really goes wherever you put it. I have this, and you can do any caliber. You just position it wherever you want. I like it really, really close, so that way you get as much out of your fuel as possible. The idea was to get as close as possible. Be able to adjust your oxygen and your gas. This actually spins here. I'm not going to move it because it was set, but this turns. And you have yourself your adjustment knob, and I have that all through a flex hose off of a 20-pound can. So, courtesy of Amazon and probably China helped me build this, which is glorious. We got ourselves our can with our flex hose, and we have ourselves a torch. So it's an auto ignition. Crank it up, fire it. Let's get that up all the way so we don't burn anything. Auto igniter on this handle. So, you know, it's really hard to tell from the pictures and stuff. But what I really like about this is several things, really. This is just infinitely adjustable. It literally stops wherever you put it. There's no spring back on it so far. It's worth every penny of what you pay for it. This knob is very nice for fine tuning. It spins out at least like several times. 1, 2, 3, 3.5 turns, and it's closed. So this goes on a regular 1-pound cylinder. So it's a 1-pound cylinder hose to the 20-pound tank. But let's get back into the annealer here, station. This turntable, I'll have the drawings available via a link to a folder that can be downloaded, along with a lot of information. Basically, let's get this thing torn apart, and let's just jump into underneath this turntable. Obviously, we have a few stations that make this thing happen. You know, you put your brass in through this tube, it drops down. This is probably the most finicky part of the whole thing. This has to be adjusted very carefully. There's probably way better ways to do this other than 2x4s and conduit clamps, but the height and position are very critical. Once you get it set and it's working, it seems to be fine as long as you don't have any mixed calibers in your brass. I had 2 failures out of like 300 rounds, and one of them was a 6.5 Creedmoor, and one of them was something else. It was a lot longer. You got your brass station, you got your heating station. Underneath this station, there's another motor that spins to turn the piece of brass. And over here is the station where it drops out and into the metal pan down below. So underneath this guy, under the carousel or the turntable or whatever you want to call it, I have a stainless steel, I guess what I call a friction plate. I want to try making this out of CRS, cold rolled steel, and just see what happens. I feel like it's more like a brake rotor made out of carbon steel. I was trying to stay away from the squeaking. That's why I went this way. Anyways, the point is what makes this stop spinning and spinning between the solenoid and this pressure plate. This is a wear item. I wanted it separate from the aluminum. I wanted the aluminum because it's lightweight, and when you have the torch on it, it's going to have really good heat transfer to stay cool. So this doesn't ever get hot, even though the torch is incredibly close to it. This is a wear item that can be replaced if ever need be, or fine-tuned, since this is what I guess I would call my Mark 1. You got the 12 RPM motor in the center. It spins at 12 RPMs. You got your solenoid. Forgive all these extra holes. We've definitely had some experimenting. This guy is a 25 Newton solenoid. I will say that the return spring I have weakened slightly because it was causing too much drag on the bottom of this. So one thing to fine tune it is I just over compressed the spring and I actually spun it, twisted it just slightly backwards just to relieve some of the pressure. You see that it only needs to return to its position. It doesn't need to be cramming into it. So you can see it just kind of, you get the idea. So basically you got a 66 RPM motor here. I felt like 66 RPM. I just took a wild guess, to be honest. 66 and 12 is what I believe these are. Took a wild guess, and it seems to be working fine. So basically we have a 12 volt, as far as the wiring goes from start to finish, we got a 12 volt input. We got ourselves a fuse just for safety. This one doubles as a switch, I guess. You got your timer circuit, which gets 12 volts in, and it closes the solenoids circuit. Here's your solenoid. The 12 volts is consistent to these two, and the solenoid is going through the relay. Let's get this flipped up. Take a look underneath without breaking anything. Fat Daddy's pan. So there's the two motors. I know there's way better ways to make this as far as mounting it and getting everything positioned. This is why I call it the 2x4 monstrosity. Everything's in its place, screwed together, just like it is. You got yourself a solenoid, wired into the relay circuit, timer relay circuit. Get yourself the central 12 RPM motor. You got yourself the 66 RPM motor, setting the height so it's flush with the table. And you got yourself some wiring. It's really just two 12 volt lines coming out and one solenoid circuit, and that's it. That's all that's going on there. The fuse and the input power is wired through the input power. So this is set up for 308 and other similar calibers. I haven't experimented with anything else yet. I was mainly concerned in getting 308 annealed, up to this point. So yeah, that would be the table and kind of the guts of it. Let's let this run with no platter on it. So you got yourself your solenoid that's going to engage every 10 seconds. One-tenth of a second it's engaged. You got your 12 RPM center motor and your 66 RPM heating plate. This is the hole that they drop out of. As far as the programming, this guy took me a second to get used to, but this button goes through the digits. The first one is the closed. So you choose how many seconds you want to be closed for. And then you go to your open length of time. And you choose how many seconds you want to be open for. And you hit this button and it goes through another cycle. So there you have it. Grab yourself a table, pressure plate. I did find that with the spring, it adds a little bit of tension. It kind of is necessary, kind of not. It's just fine tuning it. What I did is I put a spring in the center of it. There's actually another plastic washer that I dropped on the floor here and lost. And I have found it. If I can pick it up, we'll be okay. There we go. Let's get this thing to quit dancing around. Take a peek underneath and we'll see where the center hole is. I imagine that this is going to come loose because it's spinning the opposite direction. So between the spring tension and all these different things, I imagine that this will eventually pop off. Some blue Loctite would be in order. Once I'm confident that I'm going to leave it alone. By this time the threads are kind of marred up on the end of this cap head screw. So it kind of gets tight after you get in there a little bit, but nonetheless, Loctite that thing in there and you'd have yourself a dedicated plate. Turntable. I imagine that I might need different size holes for the 223, 556 annealing. I'm not entirely sure. These are relatively tight to the 308. But one thing I found was when you look down this hole, we're gonna put this in the engaged position. That's where it would be if it was running. It's actually not perfectly centered up, although on camera it kind of looks that way. Let's see, that's kind of the true position. So it's offset just a little bit. So basically the point is it self-centers itself while it's running. So it doesn't matter how loose it is, it self-centers itself, so it's always up against the edge, you know, between friction and all that sort of thing. It finds itself its home. So there's home right there. So it's definitely a 2x4 monstrosity, but it's fully functional. I do want to make this into a stand tabletop kind of thing where basically I'm going to take this and I am just going to put a square, kind of box it in on the bottom or something, and it's going to sit on top of the propane cylinder. So basically the propane cylinder is what it's going to sit on top of, with plenty of space for safety, for heat and so forth. And then you can really just set this on a wheel platform and you'll have a roll around cart, brass annealer cart, but have this as the base. So I'm going to set that on top of there with some sort of square round. Maybe take a piece of plywood and cut out this circle and slide it on with the cutout to let the hose slide through it. I don't know, you know, that kind of thing. We'll get there. We'll get there, one day at a time. But there we have it. I know this video got really long and I apologize, but I felt like a little bit of explanation and ranting was in order. God help us with Russia and Ukraine and whatever else might come. I will say, however, that China helped me build this. So, be that as it may, that's the thing. So, if you like this, give it a like, give it a thumbs up, leave a comment if you have a question. Hopefully, all my folders and everything for downloading will remain active unless Dropbox or Google has a heyday fiasco fit against me. God bless.